July 1943, somewhere over the Ruhr Valley, Germany. The sky explodes in black clouds of flak as B-17 bombers push through the most heavily defended airspace in Europe. Inside one bomber, Private Clark Gable mans his waist gun, watching a German fighter diving straight toward them. Cannon fire walks up the fuselage, getting closer, and in 2 seconds that fighter will tear through the exact spot where he's standing. He has a choice: dive for cover and live, or stay at his gun and fire back. Clark makes his choice. He doesn't move. He keeps firing. This is episode 4. 4 more missions into hell. After surviving Antwerp, Clark Gable will fly 4 more times into German skies, and each mission will strip away another layer of the death wish that brought him here. May 17th, 1943. 2 weeks after Antwerp, Clark climbs back into a B-17, but this time he's carrying more than guns. The Army Air Forces has given him a 16mm camera to film combat footage for training films, which means operating a camera with one hand while manning his gun with the other. The target is Saint-Nazaire, France, another submarine base where German U-boats threaten Allied shipping. The route will take them deep into occupied territory where the Luftwaffe can attack from multiple directions. Clark mounts the camera near his gun position, checking film and exposure settings. The absurdity hits him. Filming a documentary while people actively try to kill him. But orders are orders, and the training films will save American lives even if making them risks his own. The mission starts smoothly, formation flying over the channel in clear weather. Clark films the other bombers, sunlight glinting off aluminum, contrails streaming behind each aircraft. It's almost beautiful, in a terrible way. Then the fighters arrive, and beauty transforms into chaos. Clark fires his gun with his right hand while holding the camera with his left, trying to capture footage of attacking fighters while simultaneously defending the aircraft. It's an impossible task that somehow he manages through determination and muscle memory. He films a German Focke-Wulf 190 making a head-on attack, coming straight at them with all guns blazing. Clark captures it on film while also firing back. The footage will later show tracer fire from both aircraft converging in the space between them. The fighter pulls up at the last second, missing by feet. Clark keeps filming, keeps shooting, keeps doing 2 jobs simultaneously because that's what's required to survive. They lose 2 bombers from the group on this mission. 20 men who don't make it home. Clark films their aircraft going down, burning and spinning toward Earth. He knows that footage will haunt him, but it needs to be documented, needs to be shown to future crews so they understand what they're facing. The bombing run is successful. The submarine pens take heavy damage. On the return flight, Clark films the damaged aircraft struggling to stay in formation, wounded being treated by crew members, the controlled chaos of a costly but successful mission. When they land, Clark has exposed 800 feet of film showing aerial combat in brutal reality. Training officers are thrilled. Clark feels sick watching men die through a camera lens. Mission 2 complete. The footage is in the can. Clark has survived his second trip over Germany. July 14th, 1943, Bastille Day. The target is Le Bourget Airport near Paris, a major Luftwaffe fighter base. Every crew member knows this will be dangerous because they're attacking the Hornet's nest itself. Clark has flown 2 missions and survived both. He's developed a reputation as the waist gunner who films while fighting, the Hollywood star who doesn't ask for special treatment. The formation crosses into France and immediately encounters heavy fighter resistance, wave after wave of German aircraft attacking from all angles. The sky becomes a swirling dogfight of bombers trying to maintain formation while fighters try to break them apart. A Messerschmitt 109 makes a pass at their aircraft. Cannon shells walk up the fuselage. One round punches through the aluminum skin 3 feet from where Clark is standing. Shrapnel peppers his flight jacket, but somehow misses his body. Tommy, the other waist gunner, isn't as lucky. Clark sees him stagger backward, blood spreading across his flight suit. Tommy collapses to the floor while Clark makes a split-second decision that will define everything that follows. He can stay at his gun and keep defending the aircraft, or he can leave his position to help Tommy. But leaving his gun unmanned means the right side of the bomber is vulnerable to attack, which could get everyone killed. Clark makes his choice in less than a second. He drags Tommy away from the open window, rips open the flight suit to find the wound, and applies pressure while calling for the flight engineer over the intercom. He's chosen the crew over the mission, chosen saving one life over defending 10. The flight engineer arrives and takes over while Clark returns to his gun just in time to see another fighter attacking from the right side, the exact position he abandoned. He fires desperately, trying to drive off the fighter before it can inflict serious damage. His burst catches the fighter in the engine cowling. Smoke pours from the aircraft. The German pilot peels away, trailing fire. Clark has possibly just saved the bomber by returning to his position in time. Tommy survives the mission, evacuated to a field hospital where surgeons remove shrapnel from his shoulder and abdomen. The crew later tells Clark that his quick action saved Tommy's life. But Clark knows the truth is more complicated. He abandoned his position to save one man, which could have doomed all 10 if that fighter had pressed its attack. He's not sure if he made the right choice or just got lucky. The mission continues. They drop their bombs on Le Bourget Airport. They make it home with one gunner wounded and the aircraft shot full of holes. Mission 3 complete. August 17th, 1943. This is the mission that will be remembered as one of the bloodiest days in 8th Air Force history. Clark doesn't know it yet, but he's about to fly into a slaughter. The target is Schweinfurt, deep in southern Germany, home to factories that produce most of the ball bearings used in German military equipment. Destroying those factories could cripple Nazi war production for months, but the target is so far inside Germany that bombers will be beyond the range of friendly fighter escort for most of the mission. The briefing officer explains with grim honesty, this will be dangerous, losses will be heavy, but the target is critical enough to justify the risk. Clark sits there understanding that what they're really being told is that some of them won't be coming back. 230 B-17 take off from bases across England, forming the largest daylight bombing raid yet attempted. The sight of so many bombers filling the sky is both inspiring and terrifying, because Clark knows that empty spaces in that formation on the return flight will represent dead friends. The mission goes wrong almost immediately. The diversionary raid fails to materialize, which means the entire Luftwaffe defensive force is waiting. As soon as the formation crosses into German airspace, the attacks begin and don't stop. Clark has been in heavy fighter combat before, but this is something different. Wave after wave of German fighters attacking for over an hour without pause. The sky is full of burning bombers and parachutes and aircraft falling in pieces. Clark fires until his gun barrels are glowing hot and he has to switch to backup barrels. He films when he can, but mostly he just fights, just fires, just tries to keep the German fighters away from his aircraft. They lose bombers steadily throughout the flight, one every few minutes. Clark watches aircraft he flew formation with just hours ago explode or break apart or spiral down in flames. He stops counting after the 10th one because the numbers are too terrible to process. The formation finally reaches Schweinfurt, fights through intense flak to drop their bombs. Clark can see the ball-bearing factories below taking hits, explosions rippling through the industrial complex. He thinks this better be worth it. This better be worth the price they're paying. The return flight is even worse because now they're low on fuel and ammunition. Damaged aircraft struggle to keep up. German fighters know it and press their attacks with renewed aggression. Clark's bomber takes multiple hits during the return, one engine smoking, hydraulics damaged. He keeps firing even though his ammunition is running low because every fighter they drive off is one less that can attack the struggling bombers around them. By the time they cross back over the English Channel, the formation has lost 60 bombers, 600 men dead or captured. The worst single-day loss in 8th Air Force history. When they land at Polbrook, Clark climbs out of the aircraft and his legs give out. He collapses on the tarmac from exhaustion and delayed shock. The crew helps him up. Nobody speaks because there's nothing to say. They just look at each other with the hollow eyes of men who've seen too much death in too short a time. Clark realizes he's changed in some fundamental way. Going through hell and coming out the other side has transformed him from someone who wanted to die into someone who's fought too hard to live to give up now. Mission 4 complete. September 6th, 1943. Clark's final combat mission. The target is Stuttgart, an industrial city in southwestern Germany. This mission will complete his required 5 sorties, after which the Army Air Forces has decided to send him home to work on training films and war bond tours. Losing Clark Gable over Germany would be a propaganda disaster. Clark has mixed feelings about leaving. Part of him wants to survive, to go home, to escape the frozen hell of aerial combat. But another part feels like he's abandoning his crew, leaving them to continue fighting while he returns to safety. The crew throws him a small party the night before the mission. Just the 10 of them drinking bad English beer and telling stories. The pilot presents Clark with a painted patch showing a movie camera crossed with a .50 caliber machine gun, the unofficial insignia of the waist gunner who films while fighting. Clark is surprised to find himself getting emotional over a piece of cloth. Tommy, recovered from his wounds and back to flying, makes a toast. To Clark Gable, who came here a movie star and leaves as one of us. Everyone drinks to that. Clark realizes these men have become the closest thing to family he's had since Carol died. The mission itself is almost anticlimactic after Schweinfurt. The fighter resistance is moderate. The flak is heavy but not overwhelming. They reach Stuttgart, drop their bombs, and turn for home with minimal damage. Clark films and fights through the whole mission with the knowledge that this is the last time. After today, he'll never again stand at a waist gun at 25,000 feet over enemy territory. During the return flight, Clark takes one last long look at the formation of B-17S stretched across the sky at the men inside those aircraft who will continue flying these missions long after he's gone. He films that too, wanting to capture this moment. They land at Polbrook as the sun sets, painting the sky orange and red. When Clark climbs out of the aircraft for the last time, the entire crew is waiting. They shake his hand or hug him or slap his back. The pilot says simply, "You did good, Gable. You did real good." Clark is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service, presented at a small ceremony where a colonel reads the citation praising his courage under fire. Clark accepts the medal knowing he doesn't deserve it, knowing he came here to die and only accidentally became a soldier. But the medal sits heavy in his hand, represents something real and earned. He packs his gear, says final goodbyes to the men of the 351st Bombardment Group, and boards a transport plane for London and then America. As England disappears behind him, Clark realizes he's leaving behind more than just a military base. He's leaving behind the last place where he felt like he had a purpose, where his life mattered for reasons beyond fame or fortune. Mission 5 complete. Time to go home. October 1943. Clark arrives in Los Angeles and is immediately sent to a War Department facility where his combat footage is being developed and edited into training films. He sits in a darkened screening room watching the footage he shot. It's strange seeing combat from the outside, seeing himself at the waist gun firing at fighters, seeing Tommy get hit and fall, seeing bombers explode and men die. He has to excuse himself twice to vomit in the bathroom because watching it is somehow worse than living it. The training officers are thrilled with the footage, calling it the most authentic combat documentation ever captured. They want Clark to narrate it, to add his voice explaining what's happening and what to watch for and how to survive. Clark agrees because if his footage can save even one crew, then maybe all of it meant something. He records the narration in a studio that feels surreal after months of English airfields and bomber interiors. His voice sounds strange to him, too calm and measured for what's on screen. But he explains the tactics and the threats and the mistakes to avoid. When the training films are complete, they're distributed to every bomber base in the American military. Thousands of aircrew will watch Clark's footage and listen to his narration before they fly their first missions. Some unknown number of them will survive because of what they learned from his films. Clark finds some small comfort in that, even though he knows the footage also shows men dying, friends lost, missions that went wrong despite everyone doing everything right. The War Department wants to make Clark a hero. wants to use him for publicity and morale, wants him to give speeches and appear at Bond rallies and tell inspirational stories about American courage, but Clark resists because he doesn't feel like a hero. Feels like a fraud who came to war for selfish reasons and only accidentally did something useful. But the orders come down from high enough that he can't refuse. Soon Clark is touring the country giving speeches about the men of the 8th Air Force. He talks about his crew and Tommy and the missions over Germany. He never mentions that he came there to die. Never mentions Carol or the death wish or the guilt that still wakes him up most nights. He gives people the story they want to hear. The patriotic movie star who served his country. He keeps the truth buried where it belongs. The performance is so good that even he sometimes believes it. November 1943. Clark sits in his empty house in Encino, still in uniform, looking at his medals and wondering what they mean and whether anything has actually changed. He went to war to die, to let German bullets end the pain of living without Carol. He failed at that because he's still alive, still breathing, still waking up every morning in a world where she doesn't exist. But something did change over Germany. Something subtle and complicated that he's still trying to understand. The death wish didn't disappear, didn't magically heal, but it got complicated by responsibility and duty, and the bonds formed with men who depended on him. Somewhere in the frozen sky over Nazi Germany, Clark discovered that he could care about living even while still wanting to die. He thinks about Tommy from Kansas, wounded and bleeding, and how Clark chose to save him instead of staying at his gun. That was the moment everything changed. The moment when keeping someone else alive became more important than letting himself die. He thinks about his crew, about the men who accepted him as one of them despite his fame, who trusted him to do his job and didn't ask for anything special. He misses them with an intensity that surprises him. Misses the camaraderie and purpose and the simple clarity of combat where the only thing that mattered was surviving the next 10 seconds. The war changed him, not by fixing him or healing him or removing the grief that still defines his existence, but by teaching him that he can function even while broken, that he can do a job and protect people and find small pieces of meaning even in the midst of overwhelming loss. It's not the same as being happy, not the same as having a reason to live beyond just going through motions, but it's something. Some small foundation to build on. That's more than he had when he enlisted 18 months ago. The medals sit on his dresser, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the Air Medal. Clark looks at them and thinks about the men who didn't come home, the 60 bombers lost over Schweinfurt, the 20 men who died on his second mission, all the empty bunks and silent friends. He wonders if he earned these medals or just got lucky, but maybe that's what service is. Maybe it's not about being a hero or doing something extraordinary. Maybe it's just about showing up and doing the job and trying to bring everyone home alive. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that counts for something even when it doesn't feel like enough. December 1943. Clark Gable officially musters out of active service, though he remains in the Army Air Force Reserve. He trades his combat uniform for civilian clothes. With that simple change, he transforms from Private Gable, aerial gunner, back into Clark Gable, movie star. But the transformation is only surface deep. The man inside the clothes has been fundamentally changed by 5 missions over Germany, by watching men die, by filming combat, by choosing to save Tommy, by surviving when he expected and perhaps wanted to die. MGM wants him back making movies, has scripts waiting and directors eager to work with him. The studio executives expect him to slide back into his old life, as if the war was just a brief interruption. But Clark knows that's impossible. The man who flew those missions isn't the same man who enlisted in grief and despair. He's not healed, not fixed, not over Carol or the guilt or the crushing weight of living without her. But he's learned something about himself over Germany that he didn't know before. He's stronger than he thought, capable of more than he imagined, able to function and contribute even while broken. The war didn't cure him, but it taught him how to carry his wounds. That's something. That's progress. That's enough to keep going even when going feels impossible. Hollywood will call him a hero. will make movies about actors who serve their country, will use his image to sell war bonds and inspire the public. But Clark knows the truth is more complicated. He came to war as a suicide mission and only accidentally became a soldier. His courage was just the death wish transformed by responsibility into something that looked like bravery. But maybe that's what all courage is. Maybe it's just fear and pain channeled into action. Maybe nobody feels brave when they're doing brave things. Maybe everyone is just doing their best with what they have and hoping it's enough. Private William Clark Gable flew 5 combat missions over Nazi Germany between May and September 1943. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal. He filmed thousands of feet of combat footage that would train bomber crews for the rest of the war. He saved lives and took lives and did his job as well as anyone could expect. And he came home alive when he expected to die, which might be the greatest victory of all. Even if it doesn't feel like victory, even if it just feels like survival, like one more day of carrying grief and guilt and the unbearable weight of being alive. But he's still here, still standing, still fighting the war that will never end, the war against his own darkness. And if 5 missions over Germany taught him anything, it's that you keep fighting even when you want to quit, because the people depending on you deserve nothing less. Next episode, Hollywood wants the old Clark Gable back, but that man died somewhere over Germany. What returned is someone harder and colder and more broken than before, and the question is whether that person can survive peacetime after barely surviving war. This is Legends of America, Episode 5 coming soon.